Where I think it can be challenging for mediation to work is if one spouse is simply looking to spite the other, they're out um for revenge or something along those lines. Um, or if there's a major power imbalance, one spouse who simply doesn't have as much information and doesn't have that support team that is standing behind them in the background.
Welcome to Divorce Diaries, where attorney Cary Jacobson brings you real stories, hard truths, and practical advice on navigating divorce and family law. Whether you're going through it, considering it, or just curious, this is your place for clarity, confidence, and resilience.
Hey, welcome back to Divorce Diaries, Lessons from the Trenches. Today's episode is a little different, and as you can see or hear, our guest had an emergency, so I get to interview our host, Cary Jacobson, family law attorney and mediator, Jacobson Family Law. Cary, first off, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Hope you are as well.
I'm doing terrific, and I get to play, so this is great. This is great. How about we talk about mediation?
That would be great.
All right. So let's start with the basics. What is divorce mediation?
Divorce mediation is simply a process where a neutral third party, such as myself, works with couples to help them resolve their differences related to any issues that may arise out of their divorce matter. Whether it's custody, property division, financial support, we really touch on all of the issues. And I work as a neutral to facilitate the conversation between them so that they can reach a full and final agreement.
So then why choose mediation over litigation?
There are so many reasons to choose mediation over litigation. Some of them are practical. Mediation is private. You're not going to be in a courtroom, spilling all of your public information to everyone who's watching. It's confidential. So the things that are said in mediation are not going to be released to anyone else. You get to have a frank conversation with your spouse on what needs to be dealt with and the reasons behind that. It's also really focusing on solutions. When we're in court, it's looking at all of the terrible things that happened that got us to where they are. Mediation really shifts that focus from not what happened, but this is where we are now and what are we going to do going forward? So it's creating solutions that hopefully will help them be better co-parents if they have kids, less adversarial going forward. And honestly, the other big thing is that mediation is much less expensive and is so much faster than the traditional litigation practice.
Wow. But it definitely sounds like that's the way to go, but is mediation right for everyone?
The quick answer is no, though I would say it is right for more people than they may necessarily think. So some people have the misconception that, okay, well, my spouse and I already agree. Do we really need mediation? The answer is actually mediation can be a very easy way for you to get your agreement on paper instead of doing it yourself and doing it wrong or hiring the attorneys to kind of make it more complicated than it needs to be. The other times or the other misconception is, well, my spouse and I don't agree on anything, and so we can't do mediation. And really, that's what mediation is there for. It's so we can try to find those things where you and your spouse may find agreement and being creative and thinking outside the box. Where I think it can be challenging for mediation to work is if one spouse is simply looking to spite the other, they're out for revenge or something along those lines. Or if there's a major power imbalance, one spouse who simply doesn't have as much information and doesn't have that support team that is standing behind them in the background.
Makes sense. So with all your experience in mediation, what benefits have you seen that you can speak to?
Well, The reason I started focusing on mediation and other out of court resolutions is because I saw how detrimental the litigation practice really was to families. Even when people didn't necessarily need to be in litigation, because they simply thought that's where they needed to go. So mediation, couples typically leave with less conflict because now we mirrored what that communication should look like. They often walk out of mediation with healthier co-parenting relationships, which is so important if they have kids of any age. And they truly walk away with a plan that's going to be tailored to their family instead of a judge, picking something that just doesn't work for them.
So then what about, or I guess, how does mediation reduce conflict?
Like I said before, we really shift that focus and look at what is going to happen in the future. So we don't go back and rehash past the great arguments. We don't, talk about what really led them to divorce in the right now. Um, we're really focusing on how can we set the two of them up going forward so it does reduce conflict. And sometimes that could be creating a communication protocol. It can be, well, talk about how you're going to share calendars. It can be, okay, well, instead of leaving times for transitions up in the air, let's get specific about what each holiday is going to look like, the days and the weeks and times that transitions of the kids are going to take place. So we get really focused on all the minutia so it reduces conflict in the future.
About the all important money and time question.
Yeah. So litigation can last years. And unfortunately, on average, probably is about anywhere between $30,000 to $60,000 per spouse.
Wow.
Mediation is a fraction of that. Usually, our couples are spending less than $10,000 together. And we often are done in as little as one mediation session.
So, Cary, can you walk us through the process?
Absolutely. And it slightly varies depending on each couple and where they are in the process. But really, what we start with is a joint consultation where I get a better sense of what the issues are that the couple needs to address. And then when we're in our mediation sessions, it's a time for us to gather all of the financial information, the parenting information, how they're going to co-parent with one another, what the schedule is going to look like, and going through each of the issues, how they're going to divide property, anything related to, financial support. Once the parties have reached that final agreement, then we actually draft the mediated marital settlement agreement that eventually will be filed with the court in order for the divorce to be finalized. And this process, depending on how complicated their situation is, can take anywhere from 2 weeks to about 6 to 8 weeks.
Wow. Big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference. So what role do you play as mediator?
Yeah. So when I'm working as a mediator, I take off my attorney hat. I'm no longer giving either party any sort of legal advice, and I'm not taking sides, and I'm not making any judgments between the parties. Really, my job is to guide the conversation, talk about legal concepts. So I can talk about, child support in Maryland is calculated or how retirement is divided, the mechanics of that. But ultimately, it's up to the parties to decide how they want to arrange that agreement between themselves. And if they need legal advice, that is when I would refer them absolutely out to an attorney that can help them decide, if this agreement is in their best interest.
Okay. Okay. How about, Cary, misconceptions? What kinds of misconceptions do people have about the whole mediation process?
I think sometimes a lot of people think mediation is kind of giving in or it could turn into like a therapy session. And it's really not meant to be that. It's meant to be a structured negotiation where we're focused on the particular issues. We're talking about practical steps that they're going to take. And I'm helping them try to reach agreements on these issues that work for them and their families.
How about a success story that comes to mind? Anything that you can share?
The one that really sticks out is a couple came into mediation, and we handle all of our mediations virtually. So they came into a virtual Zoom room, and they were really stuck on how they're going to, co-parent their young kids. And throughout the mediation sessions, we really helped them build a schedule that fit with their kids' routines, you know, their kids' personalities, and the parents' work schedules. And now they are co-parenting with so much less stress, and the kids are really thriving through the new schedule.
Yeah, that's great. So now that we heard the success, it's only fair that I ask the other question. So has mediation ever not worked in your experience?
Fortunately for us, it's pretty rare that we have scenarios where mediation doesn't work. But there are some times when, for various reasons, it hasn't. One that really sticks out is that one spouse in the mediation simply wasn't being honest about their finances. And mediation really only works if both parties are transparent and both parties understand what exactly they're working with. It's very common for us to work with a couple where one of the spouses has not been as involved in the finances, so they just have less information. And sometimes part of the process is making sure they understand everything that we're working with and talking about before they actually finalize agreements.
Get into some practical tips, Carrie. What should people do to prepare for mediation?
Absolutely. So after that consultation, um, some of the first things that people should really be doing is first gathering all of that financial documentation. So if parties don't have all of that available and both parties aren't aware of all of the finances, it's a great time to gather that stuff and also share it with each other. So everybody's on the same page with what the finances are. The second major tip is for each spouse to really get clear on their top priorities, versus those things that they would really like to. Is it more important that they have, quote unquote, alimony or child support versus having, you know, something else that might be that they might enjoy, but it's not necessary. And then the third is really coming into mediation with an open mind and not necessarily having it set exactly the way that they want it. Mindset can make a huge difference, and compromise really is part of the mediation process.
Let's talk about mindset of good, Carrie. What mindset leads to success?
It really is all about flexibility.
Yeah.
If you come into mediation thinking you're going to get 100% of exactly what you want, that's not generally practical. Mediation works best when both parties are willing to compromise to, find a workable solution. And I hope that I can give some tools to help people, find those workable solutions. Part of what I try to do is give other people options, what I've seen other couples do in the past. And if not that, maybe it's also providing professional resources where they can get more information or professional guidance.
Awesome. Awesome. So, how do you talk to a reluctant spouse about mediation?
Yeah. So this is very common, where one party wants to do mediation, the other one's not necessarily sure that that's the route they want to take. Um, I think it's framing it as a way to protect their kids if they have them, to reduce stress, to also emphasize the fact that this process is going to be much quicker, less expensive, and then really gives both of them more control over the outcome as opposed to the alternative of leaving it to a judge to make a decision.
Good stuff, Cary. And now you've created a tool for people preparing for mediation, the step-by-step guide to divorce mediation. Can you share what's inside?
Yes. So this guide is really to be a practical roadmap. It includes checklists, some worksheets, timelines, budgeting tools. So it's got, an asset list, a budget tracker. It even gives some sample custody schedules. And it's really there to help people feel more organized and less overwhelmed before, do this guide during mediation, either before and or during, so that they come into the mediation more confident and prepared.
Yeah, it sounds like a really useful tool. Now, listeners can grab a copy, right? They just go to stan.store/JacobsonFamilyLaw.com. That's Stan, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, A-N as in Nancy, .store/Jacobson Family Law. And we'll have a link in the show notes as well. So to wrap things up here, Cary, what would you say that one piece of advice you'd give to our listeners today?
I think first and foremost is that divorce doesn't have to be a battlefield, and that you do not have to file for divorce in court to get the process started. I think so many people think that that is their absolute first step. And I'm here to say that that is not your first step. You can actually resolve these issues outside of court first. And mediation is a great way to do that. And it really gives both parties the chance to separate with dignity, protect your kids, and move forward with less damage.
How can people connect with you?
Yeah, the best way to find us is through our website, which is jacobsonfamilylaw.com. And even though we are licensed in Maryland and for divorce, we can actually mediate with couples anyway. So you can go onto our website and actually schedule that joint consultation for mediation. You can also find us on social media, on TikTok, LinkedIn, and Facebook under Jacobson Family Law. And so if you're ready to schedule a consultation, you can find that online.
Cary, thank you for sharing your insights today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning into Divorce Diaries, Lessons from the Trenches. Don't forget to check out the step-by-step mediation guide linked in the show notes. Cary, you have a great day. We'll see you in the next episode.
You as well. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us today on this episode of Divorce Diaries. Remember, every journey is unique, but you don't have to navigate it alone. Visit jacobsonfamilylaw.com or call 443-726-4912 for support and guidance.